Hey everybody, Suz here, back with another keto dinner ideas video. Today we are focused on keto ground beef recipes. We're going to be showing you 4 low-carb keto ground beef recipes. If you're new here, we film these keto dinner idea videos every single week. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and join our crew. Let's get into the video. And before we jump into our keto cooking, I just want to take a moment and thank FORA for sponsoring this week's Keto Dinner Ideas video. I have been using their FORA 6 Connect multifunction blood glucose and ketone levels monitoring system for the last couple of months, and I have just been loving the system as it really helped me keep track of my ketones and has helped me go from just a level of nutritional ketosis, as you can see here, to a greater fat burning level of ketosis, and that just gives me a little peace of mind that I'm, doing something right while I'm on this keto journey. It's super compact, easy to use, making it easy to track your ketones or your blood glucose levels anytime and anywhere. It uses advanced gold strip technology for high precision, accuracy, and reliability, as well as advanced GDH FAD technology to eliminate interference from oxygen variation and non-glucose sugars like maltose or galactose. Its sip-in technology allows you to get a quick and easy blood sample from any angle, even upside down, and its built-in memory can store up to 1,000 results. Even better, it is Bluetooth enabled for wireless connectivity with their free app i4HM, which allows you to easily analyze and track all of your results in one place. This app also has some other cool features such as reference guides, digital owner's instruction manual, and quick links to their online store to easily purchase additional testing strips and our other accessories. Make sure you check out the link down below in the description box for more information, as well as all of the information you need to buy your own, and make sure you use the code FORAXSUZ for 10% off of your meter. Thanks again, FORA. Now let's get to cooking. First up, we tried these awesome stuffed peppers from dinner and then dessert. She called them Philly cheesesteak stuffed peppers, but I'm leaving the mushrooms out of mine. Check out the original recipe link down below if you want to add those in, but to start with, I'm taking a large skillet over medium heat, adding 2 tablespoons of butter, half a cup of diced just regular yellow onion, and I am just sauteing that around for a couple minutes to let it go ahead and start to soften some. To that, I'm adding 1 pound of lean ground beef. Using my handy dandy meat chopper upper, I always have linked in the description box down below to break that beef apart and let it start browning. Now I'm adding a half a teaspoon sea salt to that, as well as a half a teaspoon ground black pepper, and continuing to work that into our ground beef and let it continue to brown. Next, I'm going to use this Primal Kitchen unsweetened ketchup. I love this stuff. I'm adding 2 tablespoons of that to our skillet, along with 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. Now I'm adding a half a cup of beef broth to our skillet. The original recipe adds 1 cup, but because I am not pre-draining my beef or adding the mushrooms, I cut the liquid in half, and we're just gonna stir this around until it's nicely combined. I am bringing it up to a bubbling simmer and letting this cook down for about 15 to 20 minutes, just so that it can reduce. Once it's thickened, I'm taking this off the heat and going over to my peppers. So in I think this is a 9 by 13 glass casserole dish, spraying it with a little olive oil cooking spray. I have 3 medium-sized bell peppers that I split in half lengthwise and removed the seeds, and I am just going to evenly divide our ground beef mixture among all of our bell peppers. And I have 1 cup of shredded sharp cheddar cheese. I'm gonna go ahead and use less than half of it to sprinkle on top of our peppers to begin with. And this is about how much I have left sticking to the side. Using some nonstick foil so that it doesn't tear our cheese away, I'm gonna place this on top of our casserole dish with the non-stick side down and just cover this nice and tightly. And I'm gonna go ahead and put this into a 350-degree oven for 45 minutes. And this is what they look like once they come out of the oven after the first go around. I'm just gonna top them with the remaining shredded cheddar cheese we have, and then place them back into the 350-degree oven uncovered for about another 5 minutes to let it melt all the way. And here they are finished. These were so delicious, and if you're a mushroom fan, you could definitely add those and they will be more like a cheesesteaky kind of feel, but I loved the flavor of these as is. This is one plated up with just a little pinch of dried parsley on top. These were excellent, and they stored and reheated really well to have for keto lunches throughout the week. Stuffed peppers are always a great go-to ground beef recipe. Next up, we tried I Breathe I'm Hungry's Keto Lasagna Meatloaf, and oh my gosh, it was totally worth the effort that it took to make it. So to start with, I am taking a 9-inch loaf pan, and we're gonna just line this with some nonstick foil. So the easiest way to do that is to flip it over. I am measuring out my nonstick foil and making sure I have a decent overhang on either side of my loaf pan, and I'm gonna put it on top of it, nonstick side down, and just shape it all the way around my loaf pan tightly. And then you can just lift the whole thing off, flip your loaf pan over, and your foil will fit inside it perfectly. I'm just gonna fit this in here. Make sure I fold down the edges on the side, and then you can see I've got this overhang here, and that's gonna work as handles for us to remove our meatloaf after it's done. Sticking this to the side, we're gonna get started on our ground beef. So we're adding 2 pounds of ground beef to a bowl with 2 large eggs, 1 teaspoon of sea salt, 1/4 teaspoon ground black pepper, 1/2 teaspoon garlic powder, and 1/2 teaspoon onion powder. And then we're just gonna get in there with our hands and get messy and go ahead and mix this all up really well. There you go. Sticking that all into our loaf pan. And then we're just gonna use our hands to kind of mash this in. I'm using my fist to just kind of push the ground beef down to make kind of a hollow well in the middle of our loaf. And also working the ground beef up the sides of our loaf pan as well. And this is gonna make a nice hollow area for us to fill with our ricotta mixture and our spinach. Okay, once you have it kind of like this, we are taking some raw spinach. I just have 1 cup of chopped baby spinach, and I'm just gonna sprinkle this along as evenly as I can into the well of our meatloaf. And then we're gonna get started on our ricotta mixture. Now for this, we're adding 1.5 cups of ricotta cheese to a medium-sized bowl. Make sure you double, triple check your carb count on your ricotta. The more expensive ones, I find some of them have an astronomical amount of carbs. The cheaper ones seem to be less. Adding 1 egg to that, along with 1/4 cup grated Parmesan cheese, 1 teaspoon dried parsley, and about 1/8 teaspoon ground nutmeg. And I'm just gonna use a spoon to mix this together really well until it is all combined and nice and smooth. Now just using a rubber spatula to kind of put this in little dollops in our meatloaf, and we're gonna just smooth this out. And you can see I'm trying to keep it away from the edges of the ground beef. I'm taking 1 cup of shredded mozzarella cheese, and we're gonna sprinkle this along our ricotta as well. Again, being extra careful not to get it on the sides of our ground beef, because that is where we are actually gonna add some Italian sausage and seal it up for the top layer of this lasagna meatloaf. So for that, on a silicone baking mat, I just dumped out 1 pound of Italian sausage, ground Italian sausage. And I am going to shape this out with my hands and just kind of eyeball it to get it about the same shape and size as our loaf pan. Also, always double check your carb count on any sausages, any types of meats like that that are, more processed. Now we're just gonna lay that right on top and then work really well to press it down along the edges so the seams are all sealed together. And I think I missed one of my edges. You'll see in a little bit, I had a little bit of a cheese explosion. So make sure you really take the extra time to make sure this is all sealed up really well. And we are gonna just use the old beat up baking sheet and stick this whole thing right on top, because we are gonna have some overflow in the oven on this recipe. And I'm just using a butter knife. I'm gonna cut little circular sections into our meatloaf. And as I cut it, I'm just using the butter knife to poke the meat mixture down into the hole. And we're gonna do 3 of these to vent our meatloaf. And then we're gonna pop this whole thing into a 375-degree oven for 55 minutes. This is what it looks like when it comes out. Now, really important, she says to let this rest for 30 minutes. You can see my cheese explosion on the end. It was still so good and so worth it. So we did just let this rest in the loaf pan on top of the stove for half an hour. Then I just lined another sheet pan with some nonstick foil. See our foil handles we made here? Look how easy this meatloaf lifts out of the pan. Ta-da! And I'm just gonna tip it over onto this rimmed baking sheet we cooked it on and get rid of all of that excess grease. and then just plop the whole thing down onto our other sheet pan. Now to slice it, you want to use an extra sharp knife. Mine is dull as it can be. So you can see if it's duller, the cheese is going to ooze out a little bit more. So the sharper your knife, the better. But I'm just going to show you what it looks like on the inside after you slice off the first bit here. Look at that. So worth it, right? Who doesn't like something filled with ooey gooey cheese? Oh my gosh. Here it is plated up. To serve it, I used a little Rayo's marinara just at room temperature. You could make your own or you could warm it up. Drizzled that over our lasagna meatloaf, and I served mine on some mashed cauliflower. I just steamed a bag of cauliflower in the microwave. Salt, pepper, garlic powder, butter. Ran it through a processor with like a splash of heavy cream, and it's like a perfect mashed cauliflower. Topped it with a little dried basil. This keto lasagna meatloaf was everything. It was worth the trouble, and I will definitely be making it again and maybe, changing up the recipe a little too, although everything that I breathe I'm hungry makes is so good. Next up, we made Peace, Love, and Low Carb, another one of my favorite keto blogs. Low carb, slow cooker, kickin' chili, and when she says it's kickin', it definitely has some spice to it. So to start with, in a large pot, I'm taking 2.5 pounds of ground beef, using my meat chopper upper to break that apart some, start browning it. We are on medium heat, and she uses a whole red onion for her recipe. I'm just gonna use 1 cup total, so I'm adding a half a cup of diced red onion right now, and we'll add some more later, and using my meat chopper upper to break that apart and just work that into our meat. To that, I'm adding 1 tablespoon of minced garlic, and again, we're going to continue to work that in. And once it's all nice and browned, we're going to remove it from the heat, drain all of that excess grease, and I'm adding it to the bottom of a large crock pot. Now we're adding our other half a cup of chopped red onion, 1 more teaspoon of minced garlic for good measure, and then I just diced up 3 celery stalks, maybe about a cup, 1/4 cup jalapeno slices. I just used jarred ones and I did not mince these. You could if you want. We're adding 1 6-ounce can of tomato paste, a 14.5 ounce can of Rotel with the juice in it, and that's just your diced tomatoes and chilies. And then she uses stewed tomatoes. I couldn't find any that didn't have sugar added, so I opted to use a 14.5 ounce can of just your crushed tomatoes. And I know you're like, oh my gosh, onions, tomatoes, this is high carb. This recipe makes at least 15 servings, so it all comes out in the wash. Adding 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, 4 tablespoons of ground like a chili con carne powder, 2 tablespoons of ground cumin, 2 teaspoons of sea salt, as well as a teaspoon of ground black pepper, a teaspoon of garlic powder, a teaspoon of onion powder, a teaspoon of dried oregano, half a teaspoon of ground cayenne pepper, and then I'm just gonna stir this concoction we have here. It looks like a mess from the bottom to make sure it's all nice and combined. And I'm just making a little hole here in it and placing 1 bay leaf. I'm just gonna tuck that in there so it can cook down and flavor our chili. Putting the lid on, I only cooked this on low for 6 hours, and I did stir it periodically as it was cooking. Here's what it looks like. You can see as it cooks, it gets more liquidy because all of our vegetables start releasing the liquid, especially celery, which is mostly fiber and water. Here it is plated up. I did serve it with a little bit of sour cream and shredded cheddar cheese on top, and it was kicking. So if you don't like spicy, you're going to want to reduce or remove the cayenne pepper in this recipe, and maybe also reduce or remove your jalapenos. This was so tasty. Stores in the fridge well for doing like a keto meal prep on the weekend. Perfect keto ground beef recipe to cook up, feed the whole family. You can always freeze the leftovers of this as well. Excellent tasting recipe. Always looking for different ways to throw together a keto chili, and this is definitely a winner in my book. Last up this week, we threw together a ground beef and squash skillet. The original recipe by Low Carb Yum is linked down below. So in a large pot over medium heat, I'm adding 1 pound of ground beef, again breaking it apart with our meat chopper upper. I can't live without this thing. To that, I'm adding 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1/4 a teaspoon sea salt, 1/4 a teaspoon pepper. Cooking that in there, adding 1 tablespoon of minced garlic, working that into our beef as it browns. And then I'm adding just one summer squash, one small yellow summer squash, like a little crook neck squash, probably about a cup of that. One medium vine ripened tomato, about a third of a cup. One medium green bell pepper that I just chopped up, and a tablespoon of soy sauce. And then we are just mixing this all together really well. Put the lid on, let it continue cooking on lower heat for about 20 minutes, just until all our veggies were tender. Here it is plated up. I topped it with a little shaved Parmesan cheese I had in the fridge. This was such a simple, easy keto ground beef recipe to throw together. You can just taste the healthiness in it. You know what I'm saying? When a recipe just tastes like you're getting nutrients out of it. This is one of those, definitely. Loved it. You can even pre-chop your veggies ahead of time to make this easier when you're trying to throw together a keto weeknight meal. Loved it, loved it, loved it. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this week's keto dinner ideas video. I'm all about making the ground beef recipes, right? It's just something I always have on hand. I hope you are all about these keto ground beef recipes as well. Again, thanks to FORA for sponsoring today's video. Make sure you look down in the description box and check them out. I love just knowing when I'm getting deeper into ketosis. And make sure you subscribe to our channel, like the video, share it, comment down below any videos you'd like to see us tackle. And until next time, bye guys.